Hey everybody, my name is Berkeley Ginnethan. I'm currently in the family nurse practitioner route. So today I'm just going to answer some of the questions that were provided in our assignment. One of the questions that I'm going to answer is, what will you do if a patient is yelling at you in your office because of any of the following? And the question that I went with was, or the reason that I went with was, they request unnecessary antibiotics. So first and foremost, I'm going to ask the patient to come back to the room so we can discuss it. Um, I don't want to interfere with anyone else's care or experience within the clinic or within the hospital, outpatient clinic in general. I don't want them to feel uncomfortable just as much as I'd be feeling in that situation. So, assuming that we went ahead and get the patient back to a room, I would go ahead and apologize for how they're feeling at the moment, and go ahead and ask them to explain, their story and why they're feeling the way that they're feeling, and maybe kind of get in their head a little more as far as to why do they think they need this antibiotic? Is it because they looked it up? Is it because their relative is a healthcare professional and brought that up to them? Is it because they've had someone in the past that have used that, and for what reasons? I just want to make sure and get in their head, and to also kind of know why they not necessarily snapped, but why they decided to started yelling in the first place, and what was actually going through their head. I kind of want to get all aspects of why they were feeling that way in the first place. After they go ahead and explain, I'll definitely understand, or be a little more understanding, and say, yeah, I do understand on the way you're feeling, but at the same time, the reason I'm going to go and tell them my feelings and say, there's no specific indication for whether it be Flagyl or some other antibiotic in general, that it's broad spectrum, so it doesn't treat what your disorder is, or what you think you may have, because there's nothing indicating as to why you should need this medication. Um, and if it means I have to do further tests, then we do further tests before specifically just giving them medication. But I wouldn't just give them that medication just because they would like it at that time. Second question is, what would you do if you disagreed with the care provided by your overseeing physician? Have you ever been in a disagreement with the physician over the diagnosis or treatment of a patient, and how did you handle the situation? So more recently, I've actually been in a disagreement with a physician's treatment over a patient. So currently, I'm helping out at this COVID crisis in New York, or was a crisis. Just it's doing a lot better now, but I was specifically assigned to a COVID designated unit, so everyone who came in all had COVID, especially the sicker ICU patients. So one of the patients that I was caring for was intubated for over about 2 weeks. And they hadn't none of the doctors or any of the team or any of the team members in between had tested the patient's neurological status since he had been sedated. But his gases finally looked more appropriate for the doctors, in their opinion, for them to try. So the attending asked me to turn off the sedation while leaving a paralytic running, and to keep in mind, this patient was on 4 sedative medications that were very, very heavy sedative medications, and was also on a paralytic. So although his gases were doing okay, obviously I didn't feel very comfortable doing that. So I told him I kindly say that was illegal in my scope of practice for me to do that. And the physician basically looked at me, and just kind of repeated himself again. And I told him, with all due respect, I do not think it is an appropriate time to trial his cognitive function if he has not been trialed off a paralytic. And I said it again, and that I do not feel comfortable doing that. And in the end, if he still felt like it was necessary, then I think that he should go ahead and turn it off. But I just didn't feel comfortable, with me doing that. But I highly suggested that. Again, if you're on a paralytic, which he was at the time, then it was working, but he was also being very, very asynchronous with events before that. So maybe try to wean the sedation off, and have him wake up a little more, or come off the paralytic first and then sedation, and do it that way. He went ahead and conferred with the team, and then in the end he didn't end up turning it off, which that was I was glad he didn't, but try to be a little more professional about it and not be too mean, even though he was kind of seemed a little bit snippy at the beginning. Another question is, tell us about a time when you witnessed unethical behavior at your work as a nurse, and how did you respond? So one of the patients came in, and he made it very, very clear that he did not want to be intubated, did not want to be trached, did not want to be, did not want to have a tube in his mouth. He wanted to try to breathe because he read so many stories and articles about that, and he just didn't feel comfortable. And if it was his time to go, then it was his time to go. It was just his belief at the time. Now, on the other hand, his family was very, 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 very strong religious Catholics and pushed for everything and anything. And although he just didn't believe in that, especially at that time. So he went for about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and he was just kind of progressively deteriorating as far as or progressively decreasing in his. They were trending his arterial blood gases, and he just wasn't doing well. He's got a little more and more drowsy, to the point where it was kind of hard for him to respond. Basically, to the point where it seemed like he was a little more unconscious. He wasn't able to actually, reply with comprehensive cognitive like him actually being there. And so then, and to be fair, the interns do the rotations, after about a month or a couple of weeks. Same with the attendings, every week or a couple of weeks they change and are from somewhere else as well. So the attending had said, I think it's the perfect time. I don't know why he hasn't been intubated yet. Let's go ahead and intubate him. And although I wasn't his primary care nurse at the time, I had kind of stepped in and said, hey, this patient is not. He has a note written. I've gotten a report. I can find it for you, but he does not want to be intubated. And the physicians explained, well, he is not able to actually respond for himself right now, and the family is. So we're going by what the family says. And I said, well, I'll maybe go ahead. So I went ahead and I pulled up the note. I made sure and showed it to him. There's even a picture with him in his writing saying, I do not want to be intubated, or any tube going down my throat. So after they talked about it briefly, they went ahead and agreed that they're going to take his word, since this is what he wrote while he was cognitively and neurologically there. And the physician actually got to me and said, I do apologize. Sorry, not that I wanted to doubt you necessarily. I just I'm glad that you brought up that note to me, because none of us were really aware. So that was my experience. Thank you for listening, and glad to be here.